And we are looking at unit circle classwork. You had time to work on this as a class, so now we're going to go over it. Give the exact numeral value of g squared h squared. So if we're looking right here, it's this right triangle right here. And g squared plus h squared, so that's g squared plus h squared equals 1 squared, or 1. Okay? Give one equation with two variables whose solutions are all points on the circle in the illustration above. That would just be g squared plus h squared equals 1. That's your answer. Okay? All right. So if we do, this shouldn't be negative 380. It should be negative 390. Sorry. There's a typo. We will get negative 1. If we are looking at our unit circle and we want the cosine of 130, all of these aren't perfect matches on your circle, okay? So we are referring to this illustration above what the closest thing for them to be. So if we go 360 around and go to the next letter, we want B. If we go to 130, excuse me, we're not talking while I'm talking. Cosine is the x value, so that would be C. If we go negative 105 degrees, we would be about here at E and F, and we want the sine, so that would be F. Cosine of negative 230, so we want to go negative 230 would be about here at C and D. So the cosine is the x value, that's C. 700. So for this one, I have to go take 700, subtract 360 from it, and I get 340. So if I go around once, that's 360. Again, 340, the closest one to it is G and H. So my sine is the y value, so that's H. 225 would be, the closest one would be here at E, so it would be E. Okay? These are all made up ones. They're just trying to get you to estimate where those numbers go. Okay, if we are looking at the sine of 60, this is when we take out our unit circle. Our sine of 60, you guys should get square root 3 over 2. When it says exact values, that means don't round. That means no decimals. You should be using fractions. The cosine of 120 should be negative 1/2. Okay. Let's turn it over. Our classwork on the back. The cosine of 135 should be negative square root 2 over 2. The sine of 270 should be negative 1. The sine of 315 should be negative square root 2 over 2. The cosine of 90 should be 0. The cosine of 210, cosine of 210 should be negative square root 3 over 2. The sine of 240 should be negative square root 3 over 2. The sine of negative 30, we got to go backwards. But the sine, the y value, should be negative 1/2. Whoever music is playing should be turned off now. I should not be able to hear anything because nobody should have headphones in right now when I'm going over instruction. The cosine of 225 is negative square root 2 over 2. Okay. Any questions about any of those that you would like me to go over? Okay, your homework is slightly different. All of these, see this right here? See how all of these have a 1? Okay, remember it changes. Remember what we went over before we started this? We talked about what cosine, sine, and tangent stand for. Okay? If this is not 1, if this is a number greater than 1, we have to take that into consideration. What does that mean for our graph? So let's think of an example. Let's say this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle, right? Let's say, for example, the hypotenuse, instead of being 1, is, let's say, 3. Okay? If the hypotenuse is 3, what's the number across from 30 going to be? It's not going to be, it's not going to be 1/2 anymore. What is it going to be? What's half of 3?
1.5.
Okay. Sorry, I did shock you when I touched you. I didn't mean to touch you. I meant to just grab your headphone. Sorry, Asia. I didn't mean to give you a heart attack. Okay. All right. So that's 3, and that's 1.5. Okay. So what would across from 60 be? 1.5 square root 3, right? Those are on the board, those formulas, okay? If this isn't 1, you've got to change them. And then, okay, if I did this for 30, right? Now this is my adjacent, this is my opposite, this is my hypotenuse. Let's talk about this for a second. Let's do the sine, cosine, and tangent of this, just to give you practice for your homework. What's the sine of 30 degrees? Up here. What's the opposite of 30? 1.5. What's the hypotenuse? 3. So that would give me 1.5. I'm middle teacher. 1.5 over 3 is 1/2. Okay, what's the cosine of 30 degrees? What's adjacent? Square root 3 over 3. Okay, so that would be square root 3 over 2. Oh, interesting. They're very similar. Tangent is going to be opposite over adjacent. 1.5 over 1.5 square root 3. I'm going to end up with 1 over the square root 3, multiply the top and bottom by square root 3. I end up with square root 3 over 3. Those look familiar though, don't they? Okay, so I want to see this setup though for you guys to get full credit on your homework, which means I want you to figure that out. Okay, you have the rest of the hour to work on your homework.